effective as I possibly can. So if you're listening out there,
Hey, Ted. Different Ted, not you, Ted. Ted Haug.
All right, now you can talk.
There you
Ted.
go. Hi, Gail.
Hi, Ted. Hey, when do you need me at the golf course Saturday?
Our tea time's at 9:30.
So 9:28?
That seems like an awful lot of time for you to warm up, but
That's right. I know.
not early, that's fine.
Are you going to hit a few over at the pitching area and stuff before we go?
Yeah,
9:30, huh? What time are you going to be there? Let me ask you that.
I'll probably be there at like 8:45.
Okay. I'll shoot for 8:45 then.
Okay,
Thank you.
you bet.
Hi, Steve. Are you able to share your screen for your presentation?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see if it works.
Okay.
Home care services.
You see it?
Join the meeting.
Can everybody see that slide that's on the screen right now? South Dakota Workforce Development Initiative.
Yep. Awesome.
Yep.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, how are you?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Good.
Sweltering, but everybody is.
Yep.
Yep.
Today's gonna be another hot one.
Yep. And of course, my air conditioner broke.
Oh, no. Horrible timing.
Yeah, but
Yeah, our washing machine broke, so not nearly as dire as air conditioning, but took a good week and a half to get it scheduled for a repair with somebody. So
yeah, that's the thing.
everybody's just really, really busy.
My guy wouldn't answer the phone, so I tried to call another company and they said they could get out in 3 weeks. But for sure before the 4th of July. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
My guy finally called back and he's coming tomorrow, but that was insane.
Laura Cross.
Join the meeting.
We'll give people a couple more minutes here. We'll start Steve's presentation just a couple minutes after noon.
Oh, 22. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Why don't you take a number? I'm right in the middle of getting that website thing. I have a web.
Join the meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.
Join the meeting.
Oh, you're kidding. What was that? What was that?
Neil Moses Erkis.
Join the meeting.
Steve, are you ready to get started?
I am, sir.
Okay. Well, we'll thank everyone for logging on to the Lunch and Learn today. Our agenda is fairly brief, and we will have you in and out of here before 1 o'clock today. My name is Ted Hayter with the Greater Huron Development Corporation. We're together today to talk about workforce issues and what we can do to address some of those issues. Our presenter today is Steve Shad with Optima Advisory LLC. And now we'll turn it over to Steve and his presentation to walk us through what he has to share. And I would ask that everyone please mute your microphones. And if you have questions, either type them into the chat box or save them to the end of the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Steve.
Okay, Ted, thanks. So you may not know about me or my company unless you were interested in what was happening with the pot legislation in South Dakota. And so you may have logged in to a webinar that I did that was hosted by MTS, Manufacturing and Technology Solutions. So I've been partnering with them for the last year and a half or so on different HR matters to help manufacturers in South Dakota. I'm actually based in St. Paul, Minnesota, native Minnesotan here. And So I've been spending a lot of time traveling over to South Dakota, particularly during the pandemic, because we've been doing workshops to help manufacturers kind of respond and really strategically look at their businesses and how to be more effective moving forward, particularly because of the issues surrounding workforce. It's been really interesting. There's been a number of news stories that have been coming out over the last couple of weeks about what's happening with labor challenges. And one of the statistics that stood out for me, it was one that was produced by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, said that for every, South Dakota has the worst worker to job opening ratio in the country, meaning that for every 10 jobs that are open, there are only 6 available workers for those 10 jobs.
Join the meeting.
And so that's a pretty stark issue, and it's one that isn't new. And a lot of businesses that we talk to in South Dakota are telling us that labor is their number one issue. And just about every organization that works with business in the state is saying labor is the number one issue. And the challenge that we have is if you look at demographics, really the trend is not going to get much better. And the reason for that
Join
is
the meeting.
the aging population. There's factors related to the economic fallout, both from the 2008 economic crisis and with this one. And it's a dynamic of people dropping out of the workforce. And then we also have a challenge in terms of new people coming into the country, immigration, and it's the flow of immigrants into the countries, their ability to kind of counter affect the what's happening with the natural demographic trends that are happening. So really, we're getting to the point where action has to be taken, which is where the impetus for this discussion came from. So at a state level, we're having dialogue with MTS and others, the Governor's Office of Economic Development in particular, about, okay, is there something that we could be doing at a state level? And that dialogue is one that in part was seeded by some discussions that I had with the Watertown Economic Development Organization several months ago. And so this presentation really grew out of those conversations, because the issue is the same for them as it is for most areas where there's a concentration of business in the state. And that is, we've got to get creative in how we're going to tap into new sources of labor. And when you pose that challenge, it also raises the question, well, okay, are there other things that we can do to kind of reduce the strain on business other than just getting more bodies? And so what grew out of those discussions was really a holistic approach, which we're going to walk through today. And our goal for this meeting is really to engage this group of people.
Join the meeting.
Important stakeholders in the Huron area to say, okay, is there something that we can do as a community to address this issue, using this blueprint perhaps as a framework for being able to tackle it? So that's really our goal. And so by the end of the meeting, what we're looking for is there a commitment, a desire on the part of the participants here as stakeholders in the community to say, yes, we need to do something, we want to do something, let's get ourselves organized, and we'll talk about what that organization looks like and what we might be able to do moving forward. So that's kind of a brief background for how this meeting came together and how it got set up. Just a little bit about me and my background. This is actually an interesting circle that I've taken, because early in my career, I was involved in local community and economic development. So I was working with organizations like TEDS here in Huron and others at a local and state level to support community initiatives that would really address some of the more pressing social ills that they had. So that was right out of college, I was doing that. And then eventually I made my way into human resources. And so Optima Advisory is a human resources company, and we provide outsourced HR support. We provide part-time HR executives for smaller companies, and we also augment staff in smaller organizations with additional HR capacity to help them deal with the work that has to be done in those organizations, and really doing it very strategically and helping organizations prepare and execute for growth. So that's what we do. So this is kind of marrying my HR background and experience with my early career where I was doing community development work. And so the opportunity is really interesting to me because I think this is something where what I've seen be successful is when a whole community comes together to tackle a problem. And so that's really the framework that we're using, kind of the blueprint, if you will, for how we would like to tackle this. And so it's kind of combining a lot of my background into coming here and being able to maybe tackle this issue on behalf of South Dakota. So let's, I'm going to pause and maybe you can take off your mutes for a little bit. I'd like to hear from people who are listening in today on what are you observing? And let's keep it short because we only have an hour, but what are people feeling the pain of labor? And what are you seeing? What are you observing? And what do you think some of the key issues are? So does anybody want to offer anything up from your perspective there locally? And maybe just announce yourself and give us a brief comment.
Well, this is Linda Shear from HMMI, Horizontal Machining and Manufacturing. And we have, I mean, it's always been hard finding workers and skilled workers in Huron, but certainly post-pandemic, it has become an even tighter market, and you know, it makes us nervous long-term, but we particularly want skilled workers and a change of attitude and getting more people into skilled labor.
Great, thank you, Linda, and thank you for your leadership in helping to pull this meeting together. Appreciate that. Linda has been a key person in getting this organized along with Ted, Don Kupris, and Kurt Weitzel. So thank you, Linda. Any others?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mark.
Okay, Mark Houston. Most people know me as Smokey. I'm the HR director at Dakota Provisions.
Oh yeah.
We're currently 150 people short. And we're trying to grow. We're not necessarily looking for skilled workers, but bodies, and we can teach them what to do. I see a couple different things. One is the competition locally has raised wages considerably, so that's an issue. I think the unemployment is somewhat of a problem with the additional federal money put in there, but in our particular case, we don't have a single person, I think, on unemployment, because if you quit or you leave for a poor reason, you don't get unemployment. So I don't see that as big in Huron as I do federally. The biggest thing that hurt us was the previous administration's take on immigration. We use a program called EB3, which a lot of people are not familiar, but we actually recruited in Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and had 300 families already okayed to come here. Now I said families, not employees. So that could be between 600 and 900 people. And Trump shut down any chance of anybody coming here. And actually, we figure the last year and a half, it's cost us $19 million to be short of people. And with the new administration, we have made some huge successes, and hopefully within 3 to 6 months, we'll have people coming out of our ears. Now that I've talked to Ted quite a bit, so that creates a completely new issue, which is where they're going to live. So I won't go into that issue, 'cause I've already spent quite a bit of time with Ted, and we're working on some things, but I guess that gets us one more step down the road.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Smokey. Your name has come up. I've heard about you and the work that you've been doing at your company, and so you've had a lot of success. Well done on what you've been able to accomplish there. It's a great model, and it's one that stands as probably an example of programmatically some things that maybe other companies could participate in as well. And so appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments.
Well, let me just say one other thing about that, because some people probably have not heard of it. Most of these people that I'm talking about are college educated. They have money, and they're not going to be a drag on our social network systems here, because I mean, I actually interviewed most of them, so they have to speak English. And so, I mean, I think, and each one of those families is going to have additional family members that speak English that maybe they don't all want to work in the turkey plant. And so hopefully that would actually help everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Any others want to chime in here briefly before we move into the content?
Yeah, this is Gary Harrington.
Yeah. Hi, Gary.
I'm the mayor, and I really don't have a lot to offer. I checked in, I want to hear what our employees in our city are going through, and just to hear what you've got to offer. I just find it's important for me to try to learn as much as I can about the problems we're having within our boundaries. So I'm looking forward to some information.
All right, Gary, good. Thank you for attending. The city leadership is an important stakeholder in this, and I really appreciate you attending today. So thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Crystal Volkortson, and I'm actually with American Family Insurance.
Yeah.
We have a business over here in Miller, and then we actually expanded to Huron in October, and we're really excited for the experience. What we're having trouble with is we are hiring positions. Competing with some of the other industries in Huron has been very tough as far as our budget. But the other thing is we've had a lot of traffic for interviews, getting people to actually show up, and getting quality interviews has been very tough. The market out there, a lot of people want to stay at home because they are getting unemployment. They don't want to actually have to work and invest themselves in there. And then there's a lot of, we can offer benefits, but they may not be as good as some of the other big businesses that are in Huron.
Good. Thank you for that that input. That's a common experience for companies, and so that perspective. It's not just the shop floor workers where we're having trouble. It's also in professional white collar roles as well, and we see that really across the nation. So appreciate that perspective. So, well, let's dive into this. I really value that. We will have an opportunity at the end to have more dialogue and more discussion. We see this as a launching pad for future work. So let's dive right into what we're going to be talking about today. So on the left here on the screen is the mission of the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And that really inspires us to be thinking about, okay, long term, what is it that we're trying to achieve for the state? This is more than just trying to fill jobs in organizations. This really is about the economic health of the state and local communities in the state. And so the approach that we're proposing is really a comprehensive, collaborative, and hopefully statewide. That's what we're working on, is can this be a statewide initiative to really meet the needs of South Dakota businesses? And the comprehensiveness is where the success is going to come from. And you'll see why as we dig into this, but this is an important element of an important feature of the program design that we're bringing forward. So there's really three key components of this as we think about the work that we want to undertake. One is obviously help for businesses. Now, the issue here is not just to be able to get workers, but it's also to be able to think strategically about the business and say, how can we reduce labor demand? So while we have this gap, part of how we can close that gap is to be able to say, can we find more efficiency? Can we drive more automation in our organizations to be able to reduce the number of headcount that we need to bring into our organizations? And a lot of times businesses don't have the wherewithal to be able to kind of figure out solutions to those problems. So having resources available to help businesses really think smart and strategically about how they design their organization and fill the roles that they have is a component of this. Working with organizations like MTS to be able to
join the meeting
organization and create more efficiencies so that you can get more productivity per headcount that you have in the organization. There are also elements of how do you reduce turnover. So if you can retain the workers that you have, obviously that's going to reduce the number of people that you have to hire. And so are there programs and strategies that local businesses can be undertaking where they can improve on that front? And then the last element I'll talk about on there is really barriers to entry. A lot of times, as an example, organizations might have a zero tolerance policy if it comes to a criminal background check. And so what we have found, there are many organizations that have been very successful as second chance organizations. And so out of the gate, eliminating ex-convicts as a potential employee is an example of where a business has created a barrier to entry. Now, that's not an easy thing to necessarily undertake, hiring somebody who maybe has a record or maybe has substance abuse history and that sort of thing. But if we're going to get creative and being able to tap into new pools of labor, where are the bodies? Who are they, and kind of what's their story, and what's keeping them from being productive members of the workforce? We're going to have to really address, okay, what do we need to do to be able to make help us businesses be successful in drawing them into our organizations and having them be successful in our businesses, as well as them being able to be successful in a way that maybe they haven't in the past. That leads us to the second element of our program, and that is, how do we tap into, sorry, I've got the pictures are covering up my screen, so I don't have my cue on what to say. So how do we tap into these new and underutilized sources of labor so that we can increase the supply? So again, we're kind of addressing it on the demand side. How do we help businesses on that side? And then on the supply side, how do we tap into more bodies, and where are the bodies located, and how do we tap into them? And then the final component of this is really through the collaboration of a stakeholder group like this is, how do we organize and deploy resources where we can get the critical mass necessary to be able to get the results that we want? And so it was brought up earlier, Smokey, you brought up housing. That's a key issue. Now, no single business is going to be able to address the housing issue. But can we, through the collaborative efforts of the entire community, tackle the problem of housing so that we can get the resources that we need? And collectively, are we better able to marshal those resources to be able to maybe get affordable housing that could be built? Different creative solutions where we can get maybe temporary housing for workers as we build out the infrastructure of the community to be able to support additional families. So those are the types of things. So through this, a leadership group like this, potentially, or representatives from this group, to be able to kind of oversee and provide leadership to be able to garner and put those resources to play to support both businesses and the workers that we want to tap into. So that's the kind of high level holistic approach. So let's break it down a little bit. So in terms of business support, we look at this in 4 buckets of support that we feel could be deployed to support businesses in being able to tap into these new workplaces. So on the very first one, this is where an organization like ours would come in, and that's how do we optimize your workforce? How do we improve the success of the workers that you're bringing into the organization? How do we improve worker retention? So there are many things that we can go through. We've got a number of programmatic elements where we can help businesses really operate more smartly in order to really optimize how they're doing things. And then moving over to operations, working in partnership with groups like MTS, where if they're working to streamline your business processes, improve productivity, find ways to get more out of the workers that you have, maybe use reorganize the work that you have so that you have better flow and efficiency within your operations, and bringing lean culture into the organization. Again, we can attack some of the demand issues and barriers to entry that might be there for organizations. Also working with organizations that can help with automation, again, to reduce the demand that there might be for workers, helping find ways to use technology to make their organizations more efficient. And then finally, it's the worker support. So we have an example of a client that we've worked with in the past. One of my colleagues, Neil, is on the call today. He was the fractional HR executive who worked with this business. And they put themselves out there as an organization that was specifically a second chance organization. And so what that means is they had to work inside that company to accept those types of new employees in a way that a traditional business is just not set up to do. And so they had to really rethink what are their policies? How do they handle conflict? How do they handle absenteeism? How do they handle perhaps somebody who has a lapse and maybe takes drugs when they are maybe on probation or shouldn't be taking drugs? So they have to have the internal resources and support able to do that. And so how does an organization do that? We can help both from our vantage point as an organization that has expertise to be able to figure out how do you deal with those sorts of issues, but also externally, who from the community can help us, can help those workers, and to provide the support to them so that they don't trip up and fall down and drop back out of the workforce. So it's really thinking comprehensively and bringing the resources to bear that's going to help those workers be successful once we can get them interested in pursuing work in our organizations. Let's talk about the labor sourcing piece of this. So, it's easy to throw up our hands and say, well, all the people who want to work are working. And to a degree, that's true. And so the challenge then becomes, how do we tap into the people that maybe aren't currently thinking about working? So there's a number of populations where you have higher unemployment than you do in the general population. Some of those are listed on the screen here. Veterans are a very good example. I can think of numerous examples where organizations that I've known and have worked with, where they might be looking at the resume of a veteran and they'll say, well, they don't quite bring the experience that I need for this job. There's going to be a learning curve for that person to understand, there aren't many munitions jobs in private sector business, right? And so how do you do that translation? How do you look for transferable skills? How do you provide training and ongoing training that can help somebody transfer what they do know into what they need to know? And so the idea of providing, and there may be physical or emotional or mental issues that come along with veterans who are coming into the workplace. And so again, there are resources out there that we are planning to, through this initiative, make sure that they are seated at the table and available to businesses to be able to provide that kind of support. So how do we find veterans and tap into veterans as a very skilled portion of our workforce, because the training they get in the military is the best in the world. And so how do we tap into those as great potential workers? Native populations, this is one that's been an ongoing issue and very challenging nut to crack. Are there some new ideas, new effort that we can do in partnering with organizations, including tribes, to be able to help tap into what is really high unemployment on reservations, and are there new things that we could do? Ex-offenders I've already talked about. Disabled, there are many, unemployment among the disabled is very, very high. I don't have the statistic off the top of my head, but those are very potentially very productive workers that we can add into the workforce. And so really tailoring an approach to be able to tap into those folks would be one part of the solution set. Elderly, I worked with Anderson Windows for about 10 years as an HR leader there. And so I will tell you that the biggest challenge that we had during the middle 2000s through really today, there is the aging working population. And one of the strategies that Anderson took on was, how do we rehire folks who have retired, preserve their benefits in a way, structure in a way where we don't do anything that would harm their retirement benefits in any way, because there may be rules about those sorts of things. And how do we re-engage elderly workers in maybe light duty work, or maybe there are some processes where we could re-engineer the process somewhat to be able to accommodate somebody that doesn't have full physical ability because of their age, or full cognition because of their age. So again, is there a way to kind of re-engage with those who have maybe left and gone off to retirement? And then obviously there's always dislocated workers. Service workers from restaurants aren't necessarily ideally ready to jump into a production environment or work on the shop floor. And so there may be things that we have to do to retrain, but having strategies around that as well. Discouraged workers, the unemployment rate is a reflection of people who want to work, who aren't able to find a job. There's a whole population of people who become discouraged and have dropped out of the workforce. How do we tap into the workforce dropouts, find new ways to tap into them and interest them in getting good paying jobs at good organizations? And then finally, unskilled and underskilled workers that might be available in the marketplace. So as you see, it's as a single company, doing these things on your own can be very challenging, resource intensive, hard to kind of put together the programs, resources, and support to be able to tackle these things on your own. That's why we're thinking this collective approach through a community and stakeholders like yourselves is a way that we can get the resources to bear to be able to tap into these types of folks and reach them in a way that maybe we haven't in the past. So out of market labor, let's talk about what might be outside of South Dakota. So Smokey brought up the EB3 program, and that is a great one for temporary foreign workers. So how do we expand on that and tap into others who might be wanting to come to the United States to start either work temporarily or work their way towards permanent residence? Refugees and immigrants. I had a conversation with the International Rescue Committee several months ago when we started these conversations. They're an organization that works with families who are in countries where there is war, there's dislocation, and these are families that are looking to potentially move to the United States and become an immigrant into our country. And so the resources and support that they provide to these organizations begins in those countries months, maybe years before they end up coming into the United States, getting them ready to come here, get a job, be a productive citizen, and work their way towards citizenship. And so working with organizations like that is a way where they know who the people are that need jobs. One of our business divisions at Anderson was located in New Jersey. Our HR team in New Jersey was very intentional about working with the IRC to be able to get newly arriving families employed into their organization. It was a business that had very low margins. And so, but it was very high production, repeatable processes that were easy for somebody who lacked skills to be able to come in and pick up right away. And so we had families that worked on our organization where they were newly into the country, and we partnered with the International Rescue Committee to be the employment home for those folks when they arrived. And what the person told me when I was talking with her is that many of these families have been in the United States for several years, and now they're looking for something different. And so what happens is they kind of land on our shores where they come in as immigrants, and then usually they're finding employment within the geographic area where they're landing. We have an opportunity to potentially move them. Now, what would that take? Maybe it takes a relocation allowance, underwriting the cost of them to be able to move their family inland towards South Dakota. Maybe it requires us to be able to, as Smokey pointed out, address the housing issues. How do we get affordable housing for them while they get here and set up their families and start to integrate into our communities? So those are some examples and some creative ways that we could tackle this at more of a global level, truly at a global level, with a partnership that's partnering with groups like the International Rescue Committee to be able to tap into that source of labor. Remote workers. Here's one that's interesting because a lot of organizations will talk about workers who have professional skills where they will move to a state like South Dakota and they'll work for a company that's in St. Paul or Minneapolis, as an example. Why not flip that? Why couldn't an organization in South Dakota tap into a worker that lives in the suburbs of St. Paul and say, we need you to be our marketing specialist or our accounting clerk or whatever that job is? And so really flipping that equation and saying, how do we not rely so much on people who are physically here, but let's tap into people who might be in other locations. Our business is built around the idea of supporting organizations virtually. If you think about a corporate HR department in a global organization, they're at the headquarters. They support organizations that are around the globe without being physically present at those locations. So that's thinking like that about how do we tap into other sources of labor that might not be within our boundaries is another way of addressing this. And the final one on here are going to be people that we can appeal to and say, if we were to advertise to them and say, hey, why don't you think about a lifestyle in South Dakota? Why not consider moving here? It's a great lifestyle. There's lots of opportunity here. Let's appeal to people who are maybe tired of living in an urban environment, maybe people who are looking for a different pace of life. And the idea of moving and settling in a place like South Dakota is really appealing. But in order to do that, we've got to have the marketing strategies in place to do that. South Dakota has invested in trying to draw people into the state for tourism, being able to tap into labor for the tourist industry. Let's expand on that idea. And are there advertising and marketing campaigns that we can do through social media, for example, where we can tap into and get in front of people who are restless, who are looking for something new and a way to kind of move on and move up. So with that, let's talk about resource mobilization, the third element of this holistic approach that we're talking about. So there's 4 components I want to share with you today that we're thinking about. At the end, when you're doing any kind of coordinated initiative, you have to have a governance structure in place, and that would be a stakeholder group like what we're trying to form today that would provide leadership and resources to be able to get the initiative off the ground. We're going to need people who will be a voice for the community, a voice for employers, a voice for the resources that can be brought to bear to support workers and businesses in being able to do this successfully, and having some kind of structure to be able to manage that, hold the team and hold ourselves accountable to the results that we're looking for, and who can be kind of an organizing force for all of this. The second element of this is what I just alluded to, and I've been talking about, is this resource mobilization. How do we bring organizations like the International Rescue Committee or Lutheran Social Services or nonprofit agencies that are designed to help ex-convicts, or designed to help people who have substance abuse issues, or designed to help people who are low skilled and need to upskill in order to be employable. I've had, since we've started this, there are many organizations in South Dakota. I've talked to several in the Twin Cities here where they are set up to help people move out of, could be gang lifestyle, it could be just chronic underemployment or unemployment, resources like that. So how do we bring those resources? State level resources. Can we tap into state and federal? Are there federal grants that we can tap into to be able to help support this initiative? The brand marketing element of this gets to the piece that I was talking about, appealing to those maybe urban expats or lifestyle transients. How do we get the word out? And having the savvy to be able to say, okay, I'm gonna target people of a certain profile in a neighboring market, and we're gonna do a promotional campaign on Facebook as an example to get the idea of moving and living and working in South Dakota as something that would appeal to them and get them to action. So actually applying the disciplines of marketing to be able to go out and reach those workers and get their interest and attract them into the state and into the jobs that we have. And then the final piece of this is talent sourcing. So let's say we identify workers through these various means that we've been talking about. How do we manage those workers? How do we screen them? How do we make sure that we understand what they're bringing to the table, what support and resources they need to be successful, get them into a business and productively working? So we're going to have a framework for supporting that. So a technology interface where somebody can go in and say, yes, I'm interested, I want to apply. And then resources like perhaps our team who's looking at the candidates, evaluating them, maybe conducting assessments so that we can understand what they're bringing to the table, working with employers to do good matching so that you're getting the workers that are going to be a good fit for your jobs and your organization, and having that process run smoothly to support the local businesses. So those are what we see as kind of the overall kind of buckets of work that has to be done at kind of a macro level to support an initiative like this. And then finally, wrapping it up is, this idea of removing barriers to workforce participation. It's pretty amazing when you think about the things that get in the way of people rejoining the workforce. Unemployment was brought up earlier. Obviously, there's a financial element of that. A lot of times, a financial element of that could be tied to things like housing, transportation, healthcare, childcare, elder care. There may be reasons why they need to be available to do these things other than just the extra money that comes with it. So how do we start to eliminate these barriers and pick them off and say, hey, if you have an issue with childcare, the community is coming together to help workers get access to the childcare that they need. If you're taking care of an elderly worker, do we have the wherewithal within businesses to provide flexibility so that person can leave when they need to get their mother or father to the appointment that they need to? Do we have English as a second language training available to workers so that they can integrate into our community, be successful, be accepted, and be a part of the solution that we're trying to do, addiction recovery counseling, et cetera. So these are all the things that if we're going to get creative to tap into workers that we haven't, that are maybe invisible to us right now, that we're not seeing, that we're not able to bring to the table, having an approach where we can provide the resources to support them and the businesses who are trying to employ them is the best approach for us to be able to do this successfully. So we're getting to the end here. You may have questions that are bubbling up, and I want to keep time for questions and also time for us to kind of have an organizing discussion. But here's what we see as next steps. What we're thinking is really, I talk about holding a whole community meeting. I've done this in the past. It's very successful, where you provide an open invitation to anybody who wants to attend, and we say, we're going to tackle the issue of labor in the Huron market and surrounds. And let's invite the community to this meeting and facilitate a process where we can get everybody to contribute their ideas, their worries, their concerns, their wishes and dreams, facilitate that and process it into, okay, what can we do about this? What are some of the creative ideas that we collectively can come up with to solve these real problems that are getting in the way of us being able to access the labor that we need? And then once we have this kind of engagement and energy and direction, a plan that gives us an idea of the direction that the community itself wants to go, then we start working with businesses to help them with the specific needs that they have, start preparing them, getting information from them, starting to work with them to do some of the workforce planning and optimization work that we were talking about earlier in the presentation. And then, and also simultaneously start to engage those sourcing partners, like I was talking about. Are there the groups that work with, people who have come out of the penal system in the United States, the International Rescue Committee, Lutheran Social Services, and others, start to engage those partners as people who have access to potential labor that could match into us. The organization that Smokey works with, that works internationally to bring workers into the state. And then also begin working on the marketing strategy and the recruitment screening and placement processes. So those are kind of the immediate next steps that would emerge out of this. And so with that, that's really the end of my presentation. I'm sure there's lots of questions and comments that are probably itching to come out here. And so I'll stop there. And I see that there's been a couple of chat as well. So Ted, I don't know, should we just open it up and see what people's reactions and questions are?
Sure, Steve. Do you want to start with the two things in the chat, and then we'll open it up to questions from everybody?
Yeah. Okay, so young people who are leaving South Dakota after graduation, we need to keep more young people here. Absolutely, and that is something where, what can we do to make that appeal to people younger and younger? What's really interesting is that businesses, there's a friend of mine who was on the board of directors for the Century College Foundation, which is right up the road from my house. It's a local community college here as part of the Minnesota State College and University system. And he decided to leave his role on the board because he was going to get more involved in K through 12 education, because he has a heating and cooling company where he's trying to recruit technical labor that can staff his organization. He realized that the people that he needs to touch are in high school and junior high, and to get them interested in the work that he has to offer. So he was very purposeful about his involvement and shifting it really to the younger ages. So that's an example. But Linda, it's a really, really good point. A lot of people are looking outside of the state, and how do we make sure that they know what's available to them, both lifestyle and work-wise, for them as if they stay in the state, and if they leave, how do we make sure that there's a path back? I forget the percentage. I'm one of them. How many people move away and then move back and are within 10 or 15 miles of where they grew up? The percentage is actually pretty high. And so can we tap into that dynamic and potentially draw people back into the state as well? Let's see, my issues at the library are finding people with the correct skill levels. Yeah, that's a great question or comment, and it's a very common issue. And so uptraining and skill development is not something that's easy. It isn't something that can happen overnight. And sometimes you have people who are really bringing maybe attitudes to work that aren't particularly productive. And so this is where kind of the whole community approach to this can really be helpful, because there are organizations that specialize in doing that kind of skill development. And if something doesn't exist, it might be something that we have to create to be able to address that issue. But you're right. Part of the problem that we're going to have to solve together is that there are people in the community who are going to show up who are not ready for the job that you have. And so what do we need to do to help them to prepare? Great comment there from the Huron Public Library. Kim says, as one of the safety net organizations, oh good, who has certain education level, would ask that be mindful of that as well. We need additional therapists to support those struggling with addiction, same for mental health. Absolutely, Kim. Part of the, if again, like I talked about, we're going to be bringing people to the table who maybe have not been employable in the past. And so in order for us to be able to do that, we're going to have the support resources to be able to help them be successful. And that's going to include therapists for those who are addicted to substances, as well as mental health issues. And so maybe we need to staff up or get more volunteer workers or tap into other resources that can augment the kind of work that Kim does. Kim, hopefully I'm addressing the question that you raised there, but it is an important issue, and it's something where we have to be mindful of it. And again, as a single business, that's very difficult for one business to tackle, because it can become very expensive, and it could be something that is disruptive to the business. And so that's the whole idea of this whole community approach, is how do we get the resources where collectively we can do that as a group and not put all the burden on a single business to be able to solve that for their single set of issues. Other comments or questions? Great comments.
This is Linda. I just want to say that I'm really encouraged that we have 36 participants on this call. So I'm happy to see that the community is as interested in and invested in helping our workforce issues here in Huron. So I think this is a very encouraging first step.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
This is Smokey again. Let me address a couple other things. And it's not available to everybody, but we've got a pretty big robotics initiative coming around Christmas, where it'll actually eliminate 41 jobs off some of our lines.
Yep.
That'll definitely be a big help. I want to address maybe something that you said a couple times with EB3 workers. Those EB3 workers have to work for us for a year. And then at the end of that, partly because a lot of the domestic EB3 people came from large communities where there's they're not friendly and they're not safe. We've had a bunch of EB3 people stay here, and they bought homes here in communities. So when we do hear temporary, it doesn't necessarily mean they're temporary.
Yeah, good point.
So that's a big thing. The downside of EB3, when we get to it, if you're talking about domestic EB3, you're talking takes at least 4 or 5 months to get them. If you're talking about foreign EB3, it's about 18 months. But now that there's a new administration, and I'm a Republican, but I don't want to bash what went on, but there has been a big change in the ability to recruit people from other countries, and it's like I said, we're talking educated people, and so this is going to be huge for us. I think it'll be huge for the community if and when we can get some place for them to live.
Thank you for that, Smokey. Appreciate it.
Steve, this is Gail Clute. I'm with People's Transit in Huron, which is our local transit agency. And
yeah, hi, Gail.
Hi. And one of the things that I've seen from one of our local manufacturers contacted me, and they're clearly thinking outside the box, trying to recruit workers and hire workers. And they are willing to pay the 20% local match to purchase a bus for us, which, you know, they can wrap with, you know, promoting their business and all this. And so I think what I'm seeing is they're thinking outside the box to try to promote, you know, employment, business, whatever. So that's, you know, an option that's out there as well.
Yeah, that's great. Transportation is always a huge issue. And so, you know, maybe there's pockets of employees that are 30, 40 an hour away from Huron. And are there ways that we can tap into those workers? I don't know. I mean, that's the kind of creativity that you're describing, Gail, that we're going to have to really channel to be able to figure out, okay, what are those barriers? And one of those barriers is often transportation, and having reliable transportation to get to the job and to be predictably on time at work every day. And so how do we address that? And what business wants to buy a car for somebody? Nobody. But can we as a community figure out a way to address that transportation issue for those who have it? Yeah, great comment. Anybody else? Well, with that, I guess we enter into the last part of the discussion here for the last 10 minutes, which is, okay, where do we go from here? Is there interest in a community initiative of this sort? Is there, in terms of the next steps here, is there energy around pursuing this and maybe holding this? And if people have other ideas on what the next step is, I think it's really broadening the audience for this discussion. That's why I suggest this whole community meeting in that first bullet point. But we could take other approaches too. Getting a stakeholder group that could kind of be a governing body for this initiative, a volunteer group that could kind of lead. That would be an element of this. So I'll just kind of open it up to the group and get your thoughts on where do we go from here. And Ted, if you want to, I don't know if you want to lead this or participate, I'm happy to lead the discussion for the rest of the time here if you want.
Sure, Steve. Could we share one of our screens so we can put up contact info for Greater Huron?
You bet.
And we would be more than willing to host this community meeting for the next step and to do some organization for that as well. As we move forward with the process, I think we'll see this group expand to gather more input, and anybody that has additional questions or comments, once our contact information is shared, please feel free to reach out to either Landon or myself, and we can pass things on to the group and to Steve as we move forward.
Comments from the audience? Thoughts?
Well, this is Smokey again. I'm more than willing to help. I'm already hiring people out of all 3 of the facilities, correctional facilities in the state, Pierre, Sioux Falls and Springfield.
There you go.
We've already purchased 2 vans and we're giving people rides to work. We're not only running EB3, we're going to Puerto Rico and we're bringing probably 15, 20 people a month. We're flying them here. We're providing them free. I've been doing this 47 years. There's almost nothing that you've mentioned that I'm not currently doing. We've in the past, we've provided buses to go to the reservations and back and bring them to our workplace. I've tried about everything else, everything there is, not only in Huron, but many other states. So I'm more than willing to help, but I am turning 69 in a couple weeks, and I'm not going to be here forever.
Come on, Smokey. I can see you're going to last a long time. So that's great.
My wife's not going to last a long time. Okay.
I won't tell her you said that. I don't know her, but if I meet her, I won't tell her you said that.
She's going to last. She just doesn't want me to last.
Oh, I see.
I've been married 41 years and I have no intention of leaving her, but she has other ideas of where I should be at these moments.
Yeah.
Well, we need to consult with you while you're willing to consult with us.
Well, you got a year and a half.
Oh.
All right. All right.
We'll take it.
So on behalf of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau, we will help in whatever capacity that we can. And, you know, I know the large manufacturing companies that we have visited with on a regular basis have workforce issues. Our smaller businesses have that as well. And I like the idea of reaching into the different resources that we might have, how we get those unengaged workers right now to feel engaged, and the importance of providing the labor that we need. So I think this is a great thing that you've initiated, and we look forward to helping in any way that we can.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. The Chamber is an important partner in these sorts of initiatives, so really appreciate that and value it. Heard from the Huron Public Library as well. Appreciate your willingness to commit and be involved.
I guess I would have a question for the Huron Public Library comment. Could you put your contact info in the chat box so I can keep reaching out to you in the future?
Other thoughts? Others who want to raise their hand and be involved? Or just comments?
This is Andrea Del Grasso. I'm with Huron Housing Authority. I just want to mention that, of course, housing is always mentioned as a critical resource for anybody coming to town. And so if there's a role for Huron Housing Authority, I certainly want to be involved and contribute whatever we can from our end of things.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
So Steve, I'm imagining that this next meeting would be a face-to-face meeting with maybe some small group breakouts for people who are interested in particular topics and not others.
Yep, exactly. So picture a big room where there's plenty of room for people to move around. There's flip chart paper on the walls. People have Post-it notes, and we'll just guide them through a facilitated process of kind of thinking and brainstorming and challenging and discussing and committing.
If we wanted to be involved moving forward, how would you like us to give you our contact information?
I would say, yeah, go ahead.
This is Ted Hayter. If you could either call us on the number you see on the screen right now or email me, and I'll put my email in the chat right now.
Any other local businesses we haven't heard from that are interested in joining us at the table?
This is Gail from People's Transit again, and I think transportation could be an issue at some point. And depending on where the workforce is located, you know, I know that housing is kind of tight in here and right now, and I don't know if there's surrounding communities that might be a place where, you know, several families, you know, might live. I would consider expanding our service to those communities, understanding that I've got federal guidelines to follow and things like that, but you know, we could easily or try to fill that transportation need.
Fantastic.
This is Andrea Del Grasso again. I just wanted to maybe make a suggestion, and it might not be my place to do so, but I do hear folks mentioning that they do need certain skill sets for some of their workers. And we have a wonderful, you know, Huron Community Campus in town where people can get an education for very low cost. And I was wondering if maybe you would want to make a contact call to Doug Peets and see if he would be involved, because if there are some classes that Huron Community Campus could offer, I think he would definitely consider trying to fit those into his schedules.
Very good. Thank you,
That's great.
Andrea.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Steve, we're right up against 1 o'clock. In respect for everyone's time,
Yep.
I think we'll wrap up here. We'll leave things going for a little bit. If you want to see the contact information online, this will also be recorded and available on our social media sites as well as YouTube. And if you have any questions in the meantime, again, I'm Ted Hayter with the Greater Huron Development Corporation. My phone number is on the screen, or I can be reached at ted@huronsd.com for more information. And we'll thank Steve for his presentation today. And as we move forward with this community meeting, we'll make sure word gets out to everyone that attended today, as well as more people in the community. So thank you, Steve.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you all for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate it too.
Have a good rest of your day, everybody.